everyone. Hope you are doing good. So, this is the sixth chapter, International Organization, and in the new syllabus, it has become your fifth chapter with the name also changed, that is United Nations and its organizations. So, primarily in this chapter, we are going to study United Nations as an international organization, and some new topics are also added by the CBSC into this chapter, which we have to deal in detail. So I will be discussing them as well. So now on this slide, you all can see the logo of United Nations. It shows the globe and circled by the olive leaves. Olive leaves, if you all know, represents peace. Okay, so let's begin the chapter. We will first discuss the meaning of the international organizations, what they are made for, and then we'll start discussing the United Nations organizations in detail. So why international organization? What is the need of creating the international organizations? So international, first understand the meaning of this word. International stands for something that exists amongst the nations. Okay, inter is amongst, so that exists amongst the nations. Now remember this word, it exists amongst the nations. Fine. So all the nations, whosoever is the member of that international organization, comes together to form that organization to achieve some common purpose. Fine. So let's understand why there is a need of international organization. Primarily, international organizations are formed on matters concerning peace and security. Now, if you all understand this, the peace and security of the entire world cannot be secured by one nation alone. War is a thing which starts or which can start between two nations, but it quickly spreads and it involves the other countries as well very soon. So if you have to maintain international peace and security, then all the nations have to come forward to strive for maintaining peace and security. So what is required to maintain peace and security? If you do not want to go for war as a solution of your mutual problems, then what is the other way? The other way is multilateral cooperation. Okay, so if there is a conflict situation anywhere in the world, there are two ways to solve the conflict. One is war and the other is talks. Okay, war is not a good option. So if you have to avoid this one, you have to go for this. Because only talks, only cooperation, only interdependence can possibly remove conflicts amongst the nations. Okay, so if you have to adopt this way, then because so many powers are involved usually in a conflict, then you need an atmosphere of peace which will be which can be made by an international organization. Okay, so that is made possible by facilitating cooperation for doing all those things which a nation can't do alone. Okay, so apart from the conflicts, okay, forget about wars. There are no conflicts amongst the nations. So isn't there any need for an international organization? No, there is a need, because the problems at present which different nations are facing, they are not facing problems related only to war, only to their external security. They are facing problem because of terrorism, because of deadly diseases like at present COVID-19, or environmental pollution. Okay, and in any of these cases, or there are many more problems related to this at present, In any of such cases, one country alone can't do anything. You cannot reduce environmental pollution alone. Okay, so all the countries have to come together. And how will they come together? This is facilitated by an international organization. Okay, so cooperation not only to avoid wars, but also cooperation to deal with problems such as terrorism, diseases, and environmental pollutions. Okay, so these are the two main purposes for which the international organizations are formed. Now, the other thing that we have to keep in mind always when studying about any international organization is, I have already hinted that it is an international organization. So it cannot be above nations. It is something that is formed by the nations coming together. Okay, so it cannot be a super state. It cannot be superior to nation. It cannot have authority over the states. It can only suggest the states that what you should do in order to avoid war or in order to deal with some problems which have arisen. Okay, it cannot dictate the states as that you have to do this. It cannot do so, because these states who form the international organization are sovereign states. And what is sovereign? Sovereign is something that is free not only internally but also externally. So if it's a sovereign state, it's not in a state of taking orders or dictates from any other authority outside it. Understood? So international organizations cannot dictate the state. Whether it is, even if it is United Nations, it cannot dictate the states as to do something compulsorily. It can only suggest the states. It's not above the states. That has to be remembered always, because many a times it happens when people talk in general, they talk as if UN has all the authorities to stop a nation from doing something. No, it doesn't have. If the nation is bent on doing a thing, and if a nation has decided to ignore even the calls of international organizations like United Nations, actually the nations can only punish that nation, but United Nations can't. Okay, it can do certain things, but only to a certain extent. Fine. So this always has to be kept into mind, that the international organizations are creations amongst the nations. It's not above the nations. Fine. So now let's move on to the discussion of United Nations. So how and why it was created? It was created after the Second World War, that we all know. So after the First World War, the parent of the father of United Nations is said to be the League of Nations, which was created after the First World War. So the First World War was fought from 1914 to 1918, and the League of Nations was formed in 1919. Okay, so the primary purpose of forming the League of Nations was to prevent the occurrence of any world war in future. So prevent the occurrence of the Second World War. But the Second World War started in 1939 and continued till 1945. So with the beginning of the Second World War, the League of Nations failed. Okay, because it could not achieve the primary purpose for which it was established. So League of Nations failed to achieve its objective. So it failed. Now after the Second World War, the nations of the world were so much devastated, they faced so much of destruction and losses of human lives, property, that they decided that there should be no future world wars. Okay, so again they created one organization, which was the United Nations organizations. Okay, so UN, United Nations, actually the full name is UNO, United Nations Organizations, was formed in 1945, immediately after the end of the Second World War. Okay, and while creating these organizations, the founding members, the founders, they continuously kept in mind that what were the causes for which the League of Nations failed, and they tried to remove all those causes, all those factors while creating this new organization, which I will be telling you in the future explanation, the further explanation of this chapter. Okay, so the organization was set up by signing the UN Charter. Charter means a UN, a book of rules, a constitution for that organization. So it was set up by signing the UN Charter by 51 nations. Okay, so 51 nations is started. The objective was to prevent war and facilitate international cooperation. At present, UN has 193 members. So from 51 to 193, the membership has increased so much. 193 members are there, and the last member to join the United Nations is South Sudan, and it joined in 2011. Okay, so 193 countries at present are the members of the United Nations. Now let's look at the principal organs of United Nations. So this is a slide that is directly taken from your chapter. All the blue boxes that you see are the principal organs of United Nations. Fine. So first one is the General Assembly. Then you have Security Council, the second one. Then you have Secretariat, the third one. Then you have Economic and Social Council, fourth one. Then International Court of Justice, fifth. And Trusteeship Council, the sixth one. So I'll begin with Trusteeship Council. Why? Because it no longer exists. So you can remove this. Fine. But you need to mention it when it's asked as a question about the principal organs of United Nations. So the trusteeship, what was the Trusteeship Council? First understand this. Actually, United Nations came into existence in 1945. Okay. And within the UN Charter, within the there was one thing, that all the big powers would lift up the colonial rule, will give independence to the colonies. Okay, so if you see, all the European powers at that time had colonies in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. So Britain was ruling over so many countries in Asia, and India was one of them. So likewise, all the major powers of Europe had colonies throughout the world. Fine. So it was decided that one of the causes of the global wars have been colonialism, because the colonial interests of the big powers collide with each other. So that is why many a times wars occur. So if you have to end war, you have to end this colonialism. So end of colonialism was one of the primary objectives of the United Nations. So all the big powers started giving freedom to the colonies, but there were many colonies which were not considered fit for self-rule. They were not, people were not very educated, they were not economically so much advanced, they didn't have any security forces of their own. They could not manage their things on their own. They were very weak. Okay, so it was not fit fine to give freedom to these colonies. So it was agreed to that there will be a trusteeship council, and this trusteeship council will take care of such colonies. Okay, and what this council will do? This council will train the people of those colonies into self-governance. They will continuously keep giving their reports of their work, and when this trusteeship council will give the report that now this colony is fit for self-rule, then freedom would be granted to that colony. Okay,
So accordingly, all the colonies that were put under, all the areas, territories that were put under the trusteeship council kept gaining independence, and that's why, since there were no territories to look after, on 1st November 1994, with the independence of Palau, the last UN trust territory, the trusteeship council was disbanded. So in 1994, the trusteeship council is disbanded. Okay, now let's look at the other organs of the United Nations as well. So number one is the General Assembly. General Assembly is like the Parliament of United Nations. You can say all the member nations of UN are the members of the United Nations as well. So there are 193 members. It's 192 in your book, but 193 at present. So there are 193 members. Each member has one vote in the General Assembly. All the major decisions require 2/3 majority, and if there is a procedural matter, then if the matter is of regular concern, then a simple majority does. Okay. Then decisions are not binding on the UN members. The decisions of the General Assembly are not binding on the UN members. This you have to keep in mind. Okay, so the General Assembly is a very important forum because decisions here are being taken by simple majority and by absolute majority, 2/3 majority. The decisions though are not binding. Okay, but does it make any difference that the decisions are not binding? If there is a body in the world where almost all the nations are represented and that body takes certain decisions, will the nations will not accept the decision? Because though the decision is not binding in nature, it has the moral force. It has the moral force that it is the will of the majority of the nations of that international body, of the entire world. So the nations do go by with the decisions of General Assembly commonly. Okay, so apart from this, the General Assembly elects the non-permanent member of the Security Council. It takes part in the election of the judges in the International Court of Justice. It elects the Secretary General of the United Nations. It discusses the reports of several agencies. It discusses the report of first Economic and Social Council, and then discusses all the arrows that you can see. These arrows, they submit their report to the General Assembly. All the arrows that are coming here. Okay, so they are responsible towards General Assembly, and their reports can be discussed and are discussed in the General Assembly as well. So it is a most important organ of the United Nations. Now we go to Security Council. The Security Council is the organ of the United Nations which is primarily responsible for peace and war. So any matter related to war and peace will be discussed by Security Council anywhere in the world. Okay, so it is one marker, it is sometimes asked. That's why I'm telling you that if it is asked that which organ of the United Nations is responsible for war and peace, it is Security Council. Please don't write General Assembly there. Okay, it is Security Council which is responsible for war and peace. So there are 15 members in the Security Councils. 5 permanent and 10 non-permanent. Okay, the 5 permanent members, P5, I have very often told you who are these 5 permanent. To repeat, it is USA, UK, Russia, France and China. Okay, so these are the 5 permanent members of Security Council. The 10 non-permanent members of the Security Council are elected by the General Assembly for a 2-year term. Fine. They are elected for 2 years. The 10 non-permanent members are elected for a 2-year term by the General Assembly. Now the next thing is very important to note. The decisions are binding on all the UN members. So only Security Council has the right to take binding decisions, and that too only related to the matters of war and peace. Fine. And to take the decisions which are binding in nature, the concurrence of all 5 permanent members is necessary. This is called veto power, which I will be discussing in detail in the further discussions of the chapter. Okay, so Security Council is the body which can take binding decisions. What kind of binding decisions it can take, how it does take those decisions, what is the importance of this provision of the UN Charter, that all I'm going to discuss in detail. Fine. So this is Security Council. Then the third one is the Secretariat. Secretariat is simply, you can say, a clerical office. Fine. So all these organizations which are working, the principal organs which are working in the United Nations, they have a lot of official work to do. And this is done by an international staff under the principal organs. And this staff is headed by a Secretary General. So this is called Secretariat. Okay, international staff means this is staff. The staff of the Secretariat is deputed from all the countries of the world, all the member nations. Fine. So this international staff is headed by a Secretary General, and the Secretary General is appointed by the General Assembly on the recommendation of the Security Council. Fine. So Secretary General is appointed by the General Assembly on the recommendation of the Security Council for a term of 5 years. Okay. The office of the Secretary General of late has become very important, and it is a very reputed office, and the opinions of the Secretary General is always respected and heard. Fine. Now we go to another organ, the fourth organ, that is International Court of Justice. Now International Court of Justice has 15 judges. They are elected for a period of 9 years, by absolute majority in both the General Assembly and the Security Council. What is this absolute majority? Absolute majority, wherever the term comes, it is 2/3 majority. Okay, so it can be called absolute majority, it can be called special majority. Fine, wherever the term comes, it is 2/3 majority. So in Security Council, 12 members have to agree to the appointment of a judge, and in General Assembly, 2/3 of 193 members have to agree for the selection of a judge. So they serve for a period of 9 years. Okay, and the headquarters of the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, is at The Hague, Netherlands. This is very much asked in the exams as well. Then you have Economic and Social Council. The Economic and Social Council has 54 seats. This is the council that discusses mainly the economic and social aspects of the organization. Any issues related with economic exchanges, social development, cultural development, that is discussed by the Economic and Social Councils. And it has 54 seats. And the members are elected by the General Assembly on the basis of geographical representation. And okay, so on the basis of geographical representation, the members are elected by the General Assembly. Now there are so many white boxes also, you can see. So what are these white boxes? Let's see. So this is the subsidiary body of the Security Council. So what is there? Military Staff Committee, International Criminal Tribunal, okay, and peacekeeping operations and missions. All of them are the subsidiary bodies of Security Council, directly working under the Security Council, reporting to Security Council. Okay, then you have related organizations that report both to Security Council and the General Assembly. That is IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, reports both to Security Council and the General Assembly. Okay, then you have this one is Research and Training Institute, for example the Research Institute of Social Development, that reports to General Assembly. Then you have certain programs and funds that are run by the General Assembly, directly working under General Assembly, reporting to General Assembly, and these are very important. That is UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, then UNDP, United Nations Development Program, then UNICEF, United Nations International Trade and Emergency Fund, then UNHRC, United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, and there are certain others also. See, the full forms of all these are asked in one marker. So you have to know the full forms. Fine. Then the other entities here are the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, then the UN University Joint Program on HIV AIDS, all that. Then specialized agencies reporting to Economic and Social Council, that is the ILO, International Labour Organization, Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, UNESCO, United Nations Economic, Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, WHO, World Health Organization, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, all them reporting to ECOSOC, the Economic and Social Council. Then there are regional commissions, fine, and related organizations. So all this one page, if you prepare thoroughly, half of the chapter is done. It has the detail of all the principal organs, and not more than this is asked in your exams. It has the names of all the special bodies and their full forms also, which you need to learn. Okay. Now Secretary General will quickly do. Secretary General of the United Nations is the head of the United Nations Secretariat. I told you. It is one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations. At present, who elects? On the recommendation of Security Council, the General Assembly elects a Secretary General. At present, Antonio Guterres of Portugal is the Secretary General of the United Nations. He is the 9th Secretary General and his term began on 1st January 2017. Now see all the Secretary Generals of the United Nations. The first one being Trygve Lie of Norway. Second is Dag Hammarskjöld of Sweden. Then U Thant of Myanmar. Then Kurt Waldheim of Austria. Then Xavier Perez de Cuellar of Peru. Then Boutros Ghali of Egypt. Kofi Annan of Ghana came to office in 1997, remained till 2006. Okay, then Ban Ki-moon of South Korea from 2007 to 2016. Actually, the Secretary Generals are liable for re-election also immediately, or they are elected for a period of 5 years, but they can be re-elected also. Okay, and then the present one, Antonio Guterres of Portugal, assumed office in 2017. So this much is enough for this video. In the next video, I'll be discussing about the changes that have occurred in the global politics and the global scenario over the past years, and how that requires a change in the structure and functioning of the United Nations. So many reforms are being called for in the United Nations, and we are going to discuss in detail that what these reforms are for, and how India has, what is India's stand or views on those reforms, stake in these reforms. Okay, so that's all for today. Keep reading, keep studying, stay fit and fine.